I'm April Barrett, and at 32 years old, I experienced the ultimate betrayal. My own mother and father sold my home behind my back. Just 3 weeks before my younger sister Megan was scheduled to walk down the aisle, I received a phone call that completely obliterated my understanding of my own family. My parents were actually giggling on the other end of the line as they thanked me for my generous wedding gift. Without ever saying a word to me, they had forged my signature, liquidated the apartment I had spent 8 grueling years saving for, and funneled every penny into Megan's lavish, $100,000 dream wedding. They didn't ask for a dime, they simply stole it. But shockingly, that wasn't even the most devastating revelation. The absolute worst part was discovering that my sister had been secretly stealing the credit for a massive financial sacrifice I had been making for 4 straight years. Before I dive into the absolute chaos of what happened next, do me a quick favor, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel, but only if you are truly invested in this story. Also, drop a comment letting me know where in the world you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. To truly understand why this specific betrayal shattered something deep inside of me, I have to rewind the clock. In the Barrett household, my younger sister Megan was the undisputed center of the solar system, and I was merely a satellite meant to revolve around her. Growing up, you learned your role very quickly. Megan was the baby of the family. She was 4 years younger than me, effortlessly charismatic, and naturally commanded the attention of whatever room she walked into. It wasn't that my parents explicitly stated they loved her more, they just had wildly different standards for the two of us. For Megan, the universe was meant to be a cushioned, comfortable place. For me, life was a series of obstacles designed to build character. I still remember when we were kids, and both of us expressed a strong desire to learn the piano. I was 10 years old and Megan was 6. Without hesitation, my mother enrolled Megan in private sessions with a neighborhood teacher, dropping $40 a week for Saturday morning classes. What about me? I asked, hopeful. My mother didn't even pause from balancing her checkbook. April, you're perfectly old enough to teach yourself. Go look up some tutorials on YouTube. I can vividly recall standing in the hallway, watching my little sister skip out the front door for her very first lesson, hugging a brand new music book to her chest. I ended up tapping out basic melodies on a dusty, discarded keyboard in my room. Not a single person ever acknowledged it. That dynamic set the stage for our entire lives. When I eagerly wanted to join my middle school choir, I was flatly told the family budget couldn't cover the uniform. Yet, a mere 8 weeks later, Megan was gifted a stunning, $200 custom costume for her ballet recital. The one single time I dared to voice how unfair this felt, my father pulled me aside and gave me that heavy, disappointed stare I would come to memorize. April, please don't be selfish, he sighed. Your sister is delicate. She requires a softer touch. You've always been our strong one. And so, I adapted. I mastered the art of being strong. I trained myself to stop asking for things. I realized that the moment I advocated for my own needs, I was instantly labeled as the difficult child, the resentful sibling, the girl who simply refused to celebrate her sister's joy. Looking back now with perfect clarity, I see that they had been conditioning me my entire life to accept the massive violation they were about to commit. Naturally, this unequal treatment didn't magically disappear when we reached adulthood. It only intensified. When I graduated from university, summa cum laude, no less, and the very first person in our family lineage to earn a degree, my parents were nowhere to be found in the audience. They claimed they had forgotten to book their plane tickets. In reality, they were completely consumed with helping Megan move into a brand new apartment across town, a lease they had happily co-signed because her credit score was abysmal. We'll do a nice dinner when you come back for the holidays, my mother casually promised over the phone, her voice sounding incredibly distracted. Megan really needs our hands-on help right now. So, I proudly walked across that graduation stage completely alone. The only photos I have in my cap and gown were taken by my college roommate's parents. Flash forward 8 years. I finally purchased my very own apartment. I didn't have a cosigner. I didn't ask for a loan. It was the result of agonizing 60-hour work weeks, eating cheap leftovers from Tupperware, and treating my savings account like an impenetrable vault. The afternoon the real estate agent handed me my keys, I enthusiastically called my parents to announce the milestone. My father's immediate reaction? "Well, that's nice, sweetheart. Hey, does the place have an extra bedroom? Megan might need somewhere to crash for a bit while she gets her life sorted out." There was no "congratulations, April." No, we are so incredibly proud of your hard work. The only thought that crossed his mind was how my achievement could benefit Megan. "You're just so wonderfully self-sufficient, April," my mother would always chime in. I used to actually believe she meant it as high praise. "You never need us hovering over you the way Megan does." What she really meant was, "We are entirely absolved from having to care for you. You'll figure it out on your own." And I always did. Surviving was my superpower. I simply abandoned the hope that they would ever treat me differently. So, when my parents suggested they hold onto my sensitive apartment documents in their secure, fireproof lockbox at their house, I agreed without a shadow of suspicion. They were my mom and dad, after all. I believed my paperwork was safe. That blind trust would eventually cost me a price I couldn't even fathom. 3 years prior to Megan's lavish wedding, my parents made a catastrophic financial blunder. My dad had always harbored delusions of grandeur about being a savvy investor. When an old college buddy approached him with a guaranteed real estate venture out in Arizona, my dad went all in. He drained their retirement funds, took out all the equity in their family home, and handed over every last cent they possessed. Naturally, the entire project imploded within 6 months. The shady developers took the money and ran. My parents were suddenly staring down the barrel of a massive mortgage they had zero ability to pay, resulting in a terrifying foreclosure warning stapled to their front door. I only discovered this crisis by pure luck. The bank accidentally mailed a final past due notice to my apartment instead of theirs due to a clerical error on their account. That very same afternoon, I immediately contacted the bank and quietly set up a recurring auto draft directly from my own checking account. It was $2,100 every single month. I never breathed a word of this to my parents. I couldn't bear the thought of humiliating them. I desperately wanted to avoid those agonizingly awkward family dinners filled with empty promises of repayment. I just stepped up and fixed the problem, exactly as I always had. But what I remained blissfully unaware of was that Megan had accidentally uncovered my secret. A few months into my payments, she came over to borrow my laptop for a work project. While browsing, she undoubtedly stumbled upon the email receipt from the mortgage lender, the exact confirmation showing my full name, the exact dollar amount, and the destination account. Instead of showing an ounce of gratitude or privately urging our parents to thank me, Megan hatched a wildly different plan. She went straight to mom and dad and boldly claimed that she was the anonymous benefactor saving their home. "I've been funneling my PR salary into the mortgage," she apparently told them with a straight face. "It's the absolute least I can do for you guys." My parents were completely overwhelmed with emotion. They wept over their youngest daughter's incredible maturity and selflessness. They boasted about her amazing generosity to the entire church congregation and every neighbor on their street. All the while, I continued sacrificing $2,100 every 30 days, watching a huge chunk of my hard-earned money vanish, completely oblivious to the fact that someone else was wearing my halo. Then, Megan got engaged, and the family dynamic shifted into overdrive. Her fiancé, Brandon Whitmore, was the walking embodiment of my parents' ultimate fantasy. He was classically handsome, highly educated, and above all else, extraordinarily wealthy. Brandon's father was the senior partner at the county's most prestigious law firm. His mother was the president of several elite charity organizations. The Whitmore family practically lived at their summer estate in Martha's Vineyard and spent winters skiing in Aspen. The very first evening Megan brought Brandon over for dinner, I watched my parents undergo a bizarre metamorphosis. My dad suddenly carried himself differently. My mom dusted off the expensive china they never used. They chuckled far too loudly at Brandon's mediocre jokes and passionately agreed with political opinions I knew for a fact they didn't actually share. "This union is going to elevate our entire family," My dad whispered to me in the kitchen later that night, a frantic gleam in his eye that felt dangerously close to desperation. Megan's new life is going to be our new life. The wedding planning commenced at a frantic pace. This wasn't going to be a humble backyard affair. They wanted an event worthy of the Whitmore name. They booked the grand ballroom at the local country club. They finalized a guest list of 200 elite attendees. They secured a 12-piece classical ensemble and ordered exotic floral arrangements directly from the Netherlands. The grand total? A staggering $100,000. Money they absolutely did not possess. Megan simply can't foot the bill for both our monthly mortgage and a wedding of this caliber. I overheard my mom whispering frantically to my dad one evening. She's already bleeding herself dry for us. We have to figure out an alternative. I remember freezing in the hallway, entirely perplexed. Megan was a junior PR coordinator, bringing home roughly $3,000 a month after taxes. How on earth did they think she was covering a $2,100 mortgage payment? But I quickly shook off the confusion. Perhaps she had gotten a massive promotion I didn't know about, or maybe Brandon was secretly bankrolling her. I had no clue that my baby sister had constructed a monumental lie, and that my parents had ultimately decided I was going to be the one to fund it. That very week, without a word to me, my mother began surfing online real estate platforms, estimating the market value of my specific apartment. My apartment wasn't merely a roof over my head. It was the physical manifestation of my independence. 8 years of my blood, sweat, and tears were baked into those walls. Every corporate ladder I climbed, every tropical vacation I passed on, every Friday night I stayed, and instead of going out to bars, it was all embedded in those 800 square feet. I absolutely cherished my beautiful bay window that overlooked the city park. I had spent days painting my bedroom walls a calming sage green to make waking up a little easier. I had pinched pennies for 6 straight months to afford my living room couch. The kitchen was tiny, but it was 100% mine. The solitude was mine. For the first time in my existence, I had carved out a corner of the world where I wasn't just an afterthought. If I allowed them to get away with this, I wouldn't just be losing a piece of real estate. I would be erasing 8 years of my life. I would forfeit roughly $180,000 in hard-earned equity. I would lose the only tangible evidence that April Barrett was the lead character in her own life, not just an extra in Megan's. And if I stayed quiet, Megan would permanently cement her status as the family savior. My parents would forever worship her fake generosity, while I continued quietly paying their bills in the shadows. A profound shift occurred inside my chest. My parents hadn't bothered to ask me because it never crossed their minds that I would dare to tell them no. They had spent 32 years conditioning me to bend, to shrink, and to quietly absorb their demands. And honestly, I had let them. But this crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. This was no longer about taking the high road. This was about proving I actually existed. Being the silent child does not obligate you to be the sacrificial lamb. Right then and there, I made a vow. For the first time in my 32 years, I was going to wage war, and I was going to drag every single skeleton out of their closets. The infamous phone call took place on a mundane Tuesday. I was sitting at my office desk, highlighting quarterly revenue reports, when my mother's contact photo illuminated my cell phone. "Hey, honey." She was actually giggling. I could hear my dad in the background, chuckling warmly. "We just wanted to call and give you a massive thank you for your incredibly generous wedding present." I slowly placed my highlighter on the desk. "What present?" "Your apartment, sweetheart. We went ahead and sold it. We got a spectacular price for it, too. An all-cash buyer. Isn't that just a massive relief?" The office around me seemed to tilt on its axis. The blood drained from my fingertips. You did what?" "Oh, come on. We knew you'd be completely on board." Her tone was disgustingly warm, totally void of guilt. "You've always been such a giving person, and now Megan's reception is going to be flawless. Do you know the florist alone is costing?" "I never agreed to this," I interrupted, my voice trembling. There was a heavy pause on the line. Then, my father's voice chimed in, dripping with that condescending authority I despised. "April, stop being so theatrical. It is just a piece of real estate. It is my piece of real estate." "We are a family," my mother interjected, employing that sickeningly patient tone you'd use to explain basic math to a toddler. What is yours is ours. That is how a family operates. Besides, you are so incredibly capable. You'll easily bounce back and find a new place. Capable. That was their favorite code word for disposable. My throat felt like it was swelling shut. How did you even pull this off? I never signed a single legal document. Dead silence. Then, my dad awkwardly cleared his throat. We handled the administrative side of things. You gave us your official paperwork to hold in the lockbox years ago, remember? We just facilitated the process on your behalf. Facilitated. That was a really cute word for felony forgery. They had committed massive financial fraud, and they were treating it like a funny family anecdote. The final closing date is next week, my mom chirped, trying to lighten the mood again. We truly appreciate this, April. We always knew you were the dependable one. I ended the call without uttering another syllable. They were literally still laughing as I tapped the red button. They were completely oblivious to the hurricane they had just invited into their lives. My best friend, Claire Donovan, had been my rock since our freshman year of college. Conveniently, she was also one of the most ruthless and brilliant real estate attorneys in our district. They did what? Her voice dropped an entire octave when I quickly explained the situation. They liquidated your property and forged your signature? They think this is a done deal. Give me exactly 60 minutes. 47 minutes later, my phone rang. The sale is entirely unfinalized, Claire announced, her voice razor sharp. They drafted a purchase agreement, but the final closing hasn't occurred. The title agency actually put a hold on the file because your signature looked deeply inconsistent with their internal records. A massive wave of relief washed over my body, immediately chased by a fiery, blinding rage. So, the sale isn't legally binding. April, it is textbook fraud. You have every right to pursue heavy criminal charges right this second. I stared blankly at my office wall, processing the reality of sending my own parents to a state penitentiary. But there's another piece to this puzzle, Claire continued, her tone shifting into something far more serious. I've been digging into your family's recent financial history to see why they're so desperate. Your mom was apparently boasting to a mutual acquaintance at the supermarket about how Megan has been solely funding their mortgage for years. She called her an absolute saint. The temperature in my office plummeted. Wait, repeat that. She specifically said Megan has been covering their house payments. Has been doing it for years. My hands began to violently tremble. Claire, that is physically impossible. I am the one paying that mortgage. I have been paying it for 48 months. Every single withdrawal comes straight from my personal checking account. A deafening silence stretched across the phone line. April, are you absolutely positive? I have a mountain of bank statements. I have every single automated confirmation email. It is my routing number. It is my signature. Another pause, this one thick with terrible realization. Then your little sister has been feeding them a massive lie. She hijacked your financial sacrifice. My mind was reeling. Megan hadn't just kept her mouth shut. She had actively, intentionally woven a narrative where she was the hero, using my drained bank account as her proof. I need you to pull every single record, I told Claire, my voice dropping to a harsh whisper. And I need to go look my sister in the eyes. I drove straight to my childhood home that evening. I didn't call ahead. I just needed to stand in their presence and verify the madness for myself. My mother swung the front door open, practically glowing. April, what a lovely surprise. Your father and I were just stressing over the reception seating chart. I walked past her into the kitchen. My dad was buried under a mountain of floral invoices and catering menus. Why didn't you have the decency to ask me? I kept my voice eerily flat. I had mentally rehearsed this calm demeanor the entire drive over. My mom's bright smile twitched. Ask you what, sweetheart? About my apartment. About forging my name to steal a property you don't own. My dad swatted the air as if I were a mild annoyance. April, we already discussed this on the phone. The deal is in motion. The Whitmore wedding is in 21 days. Please do not turn this into a dramatic ordeal. I slowly pulled out a kitchen chair and sat across from him. Just out of pure curiosity, I said, leaning forward. How exactly has Megan been managing a $2,100 monthly mortgage payment on a junior PR salary? My mother's face instantly softened with overwhelming pride. Oh, she has been an absolute angel. Over $2,000 every single month, never misses a beat. She is truly the most selfless young woman. Fascinating, I replied, crossing my arms. And she explicitly claimed this to your faces? Well, yes, of course she did. Are my ears burning? Megan suddenly strolled into the kitchen, still dressed in her chic office attire. She locked eyes with me, and for a fraction of a second, the mask slipped. I saw the terrifying flash of recognition. She knew why I was asking. But then, she plastered on that identical, sickeningly sweet smile she had used to manipulate the world since kindergarten. Yep, she purred smoothly. I've been handling the house payments. It's simply what a good family member does. She stared directly into my soul as the lie fell from her lips. She fully realized that I possessed the truth, and she genuinely did not care. Look, April, it is my bridal season, Megan snapped, her tones suddenly turning venomous. For once in your entire life, can you just let something be about me? I pushed my chair back and stood up. My mother started rambling nervously about the importance of familial gratitude and not rocking the boat, but everything she said sounded like Charlie Brown's teacher. I turned on my heel and walked out the front door without granting them another syllable. But my war was just beginning. Hey guys, quick pause before we get into the explosive wedding day details. Have you ever had a coworker, a friend, or a sibling totally steal the credit for your hard work? If you know the exact burning rage I was feeling in that kitchen, drop a massive yes down in the comments below. And if you are absolutely hooked on this drama, make sure to hit subscribe, because the stunt I pulled at the reception, well, let's just say Megan wasn't the only one left speechless. The next morning, Claire and I convened in her fancy law firm's conference room. The mahogany table was completely buried under an avalanche of highlighted, heavily annotated financial documents. 48 consecutive transfers, Claire said, tapping a perfectly manicured finger on the stack. Every single one originating from your personal checking account. Your specific routing number. Your legal name. It is absolutely undeniable. I stared blankly at the staggering total highlighted at the bottom of the spreadsheet. Over $100,000. Ironically, it was the exact amount my parents were desperately trying to steal from my apartment equity to fund the wedding. I ran a background check on Megan's firm, Claire continued. An entry-level PR coordinator at her tier takes home roughly $3,000 a month post-tax. To afford this mortgage, she would have had to surrender almost 80% of her monthly take-home pay. She couldn't afford a studio apartment, let alone your parents' estate. She knew the exact dollar amount down to the cent, I whispered, the sickening puzzle pieces locking into place. She hijacked my laptop a few years ago. She absolutely saw my bank receipts. That is how she fabricated such a convincing lie. Claire nodded grimly. She weaponized your own receipts to construct a fake reality where she's Mother Teresa. I picked up the top statement. April Barrett was printed loudly and proudly at the header. Not Megan. Me. You realize the nuclear option here, correct? Claire asked, her eyes softening. If you drop these documents at the wedding reception, you aren't just burning your parents to the ground. You are completely annihilating Megan's pristine image in front of Brandon Whitmore and his entire high society family. I thought deeply about Brandon. I thought about the prestigious Whitmore legacy, a family empire built strictly on legal integrity and a spotless public reputation. I thought about how a family like that would react to discovering their new daughter-in-law was a chronic, manipulative financial fraudster. Brandon and his parents absolutely deserve to know the monster they are legally binding themselves to, I stated firmly. Claire didn't offer a single word of pushback. She just fired up the copy machine. For agonizing years of my income, I muttered to the empty room. And she smiled in my face while accepting the praise. That evening, I scoured my digital archives, digging through every email thread I had ever shared with my parents. It took barely 20 minutes to strike gold. 2 years prior, when I had expressed mild anxiety about leaving my original property deed at their house, my mom had replied, "Stop worrying about the apartment papers, sweetie. They're totally secure in the safe." We would never dream of doing anything with them without your explicit consent. A few weeks later, my dad had chimed in on the same thread. Your property is yours alone, April. We are just holding the hard copies for safekeeping. You can trust us. I hit print. Then, Claire texted me a bombshell that made the blood rush to my ears. Hey, I totally forgot about this, but I'm actually still a ghost in your family's group chat from when I did your mom's estate planning years ago. They never kicked me out. I have my notifications muted, but I can read everything. She attached a terrifying screenshot. It was a text message sent by Megan, dated exactly 3 weeks ago, the very day my parents hatched the plan to sell my home. Honestly, guys, don't even stress about April's apartment. You know she won't make a fuss about it. She never fights back. I stared at my phone screen, reading the cruel words over and over until they blurred. She won't make a fuss. She never fights back. My own flesh and blood wasn't just turning a blind eye to my parents' felony. She was the one giving them the green light. She had practically guaranteed them that my spine was too weak to pose a threat. She banked on my lifelong conditioning of silence the same way you bank on gravity. I printed the screenshot and slid it into the explosive manila folder I was building. She had banked on my silence. And once upon a time, she would have been making a very safe bet. But that was before I realized the depth of their depravity. That was before I decided I was entirely finished playing the role of the quiet doormat. You essentially have 3 roads you can take, Claire explained, mapping out the strategy on her legal pad. Path 1. We dial the authorities right now. Forging a property deed is a massive felony. Your parents will see the inside of a courtroom and potentially a jail cell. I pictured my arrogant father humiliated in handcuffs. I pictured my mother sobbing in a cramped holding cell. What's path 2? We stay entirely silent until they return from the honeymoon. We handle it via civil litigation behind closed doors. But by then, Megan is fully entrenched in the Whitmore family. They have unlimited legal resources. They will bury the story, protect her, and orchestrate a PR spin that paints you as the deranged, jealous older sister who tried to extort them. And path 3. Claire stared dead into my eyes. You blow it up at the country club. You publicly confront the entire family before the marriage certificate is officially filed. Normally, the mere concept of causing a public spectacle at a wedding would have sent me into a panic attack. It violated every single rule of submission I had been taught. But the tectonic plates inside me had violently shifted. If I wait until after they cut the cake, they will control the narrative, I said slowly, the clarity washing over me. They will absolutely brand me as the villain. Megan will be locked into millions of dollars, fully shielded. The Whitmores need to know exactly what they are buying into. Brandon deserves the truth, Claire agreed. That night, I picked up the phone and directly dialed Mr. Peterson, the wealthy investor who had made the cash offer on my home. In a calm, measured voice, I explained the entire ordeal, the blatant forgery, the impending fraud investigation, and the undeniable fact that the true owner had never consented to a sale. The line was dead quiet for a long time. Finally, he spoke. I am contacting my legal team immediately. Within 48 hours, Peterson completely formally withdrew his massive cash offer. The escrow deposit was aggressively yanked back. The entire fraudulent transaction was terminated. My parents were entirely oblivious. They were still running around town, finalizing the wedding of the decade, fully expecting a massive wire transfer that was never, ever going to arrive. The wedding was just 10 days out, and I had quietly lit a fuse that was burning straight toward their carefully constructed house of cards. I don't want to maliciously destroy their lives, I confessed to Claire over the phone. But they're going to face the brutal reality of their actions. Every single one of them. The morning of the wedding, I woke up in my own bed, inside my own apartment. The property was legally secure, still standing, still unequivocally mine. The morning sun streamed warmly through the bay window, casting peaceful shadows across my bedroom floor. Somewhere on the other side of town, Megan was likely sipping expensive champagne, surrounded by fawning makeup artists, totally convinced she had pulled off the greatest heist of her life. My phone vibrated on the nightstand. It was a text from Claire. The legal dominoes are set. Give them hell. I took a luxuriously long shower. I brewed a fresh pot of coffee. Laid out on my duvet was the hideous bridesmaid dress Megan had forced upon me, a sickly, washed-out shade of Pepto Pink that aggressively clashed with my skin tone. It was a deliberately terrible choice. She wanted to ensure that absolutely no one would look my way during the ceremony. Resting right next to that ugly dress was a thick manila folder. Inside were 48 months of irrefutable bank statements, the original deed to my apartment proving my sole ownership, the official cancellation notice from the buyer's attorney, the printed email chain of my parents promising to safeguard my documents, and the damning group chat screenshot of Megan mocking my inability to defend myself. I looked at my reflection in the full-length mirror. The pink dress looked just as atrocious as I anticipated, but my appearance was completely irrelevant today. I grabbed the folder, tucked it securely into my oversized designer purse, and locked my front door. The woman staring back at me in the hallway mirror wasn't shaking. She wasn't furious. She was terrifyingly calm. They fully expected me to sip my Prosecco, plaster on a fake smile, and politely play my assigned role. They had no earthly idea that I was the new director of this movie. I fired up my car and headed toward the Ridgemont Country Club. The ceremony was scheduled for 2 p.m., and I had a very important toast to deliver. The country club ballroom had been transformed into a jaw-dropping fairy tale. Thousands of imported white roses cascaded dramatically from the vaulted ceilings. A live 12-piece orchestra played soft classical music as the wealthy attendees found their assigned tables. Massive crystal chandeliers threw brilliant rainbows across the polished marble floors. There were 200 high society guests in attendance, 200 witnesses to the Barrett family's ultimate grift. I hung near the back of the room, sipping ice water, observing my parents work the crowd. My father was vigorously shaking hands, radiating the arrogant confidence of a man who hadn't committed a major real estate felony a few weeks prior. My mother floated gracefully from table to table, dripping in borrowed jewelry. Oh, we are just so incredibly blessed. Both of our girls are just so giving, I overheard her gushing to Brandon's mother, Mrs. Whitmore. Megan has practically been carrying our household finances for years. She is the most devoted daughter on earth. Mrs. Whitmore offered a tight, polite nod. Mr. Whitmore Sr., a towering, silver-haired powerhouse of a man, observed my parents with a calculating, intense gaze. My fingers clamped tightly around the strap of my purse. Across the expansive room, Megan finally locked eyes with me. She looked absolutely flawless in custom white silk and imported French lace. She flashed me that exact same practiced, saccharine smile and offered a tiny, condescending wave. There wasn't a single ounce of remorse in her eyes. It was the serene confidence of a golden child who had never once paid a consequence for her actions. I watched as my parents cornered another group of wealthy relatives, loudly bragging about how my apartment was a gracious donation from our oldest, effortlessly stealing the credit for a sacrifice I was being forced to make. The actual wedding ceremony went off without a hitch. The spoken vows were sickeningly sweet. Megan managed to squeeze out gorgeous, photogenic tears at the exact right moments. I just sat in my pew, quietly biding my time. At 6 p.m., the extravagant dinner service commenced. 200 elites took their seats at massive tables draped in imported linens. I was seated at the primary family table right up front, resting my heavy purse directly on my lap under the tablecloth. My parents were practically glowing. Megan looked like a triumphant queen. Brandon held her hand, staring at her as if she hung the moon and stars. Suddenly, my father stood up, clinking a silver spoon against his crystal champagne flute. A hush immediately fell over the sprawling ballroom. "Family," he boomed, his voice echoing perfectly through the professional sound system. "That is the ultimate reason we are gathered here tonight. Family is about sacrifice. It is about stepping up when things get tough. It is about everyone doing their specific part." My jaw locked so tightly my teeth ached. I want to take a brief moment to publicly honor the incredible people who made this spectacular evening a reality, he continued, pausing dramatically. First and foremost, to my beautiful daughter, Megan. For the past several years, she has been single-handedly supporting this family financially. Her unyielding generosity kept a roof over our heads during our darkest hours. Megan dramatically ducked her chin, playing the part of the incredibly humble saint. A warm murmur of intense approval rippled through the 200 guests. And furthermore, to April, my dad pivoted, scanning the front tables until his eyes locked onto mine. His smile was gigantic and utterly fake. Who offered the most unimaginably generous wedding gift a sister could give, the total sale of her own apartment, just so Megan could have the flawless wedding she always deserved. Thunderous applause erupted. 200 pairs of wealthy eyes aggressively swiveled in my direction. They were fully expecting me to stand up, wave modestly, and dab a tear from my eye. Megan actually stood up and performed a dainty little bow, openly accepting the thunderous applause for a combination of sacrifices she had literally zero part in. "Let us all raise a glass to the Barrett girls," my father concluded triumphantly. "The absolute best children a mother and father could ever pray for." The crystal glasses went up. The guests took a sip. Megan basked in the stolen glory. And then I stood up. I didn't smile. I didn't wave. "Dad," I said, my voice projecting clearly without a mic, "would you mind if I said a few words to the crowd?" My father's triumphant smile aggressively twitched. A massive flash of panic crossed his eyes. But he was trapped. 200 elites were watching, and Richard Barrett would never willingly ruin a public spectacle. Of course, sweetheart," he stammered, awkwardly extending the wireless microphone. "The floor is all yours." I grabbed the cold metal handle. It felt incredibly heavy and incredibly right. "Thank you, Dad." I slowly pivoted, letting my eyes drag across the sprawling sea of confused, expectant faces. Since we are on the topic of massive family sacrifices, I actually have a few important details to add. The ballroom went terrifyingly silent. You could literally hear the ice melting in the water glasses. At the head table, Megan's smug smirk instantly evaporated. The vibrant color violently drained from her flawless cheeks. She knew. In a fraction of a second, she knew her entire world was about to collapse. "Because I believe everyone in this room deserves to know the actual truth," I continued, my voice echoing off the vaulted ceilings. My mother violently lunged forward in her chair, gripping the expensive tablecloth like she was dangling from a cliff. Brandon Whitmore narrowed his eyes, sensing the drastic shift in the room's energy. His intimidating father, Whitmore Sr., slowly lowered his champagne flute and zeroed in on me with the terrifying intensity of a courtroom judge. I unzipped my purse and dramatically pulled out the thick manila folder. "I have the physical, legal documentation to verify every single sentence I am about to speak. So I highly suggest nobody interrupts me. Hey guys, this is the absolute climax of the story. But before I drop the hammer on Megan, I have to ask you, what would you honestly do in this specific scenario? Would you grab the mic and publicly annihilate your sister at her own wedding, or would you bite your tongue and handle it privately? Let me know your exact move in the comments. And if you aren't subscribed yet, hit that button now, because the fallout from this speech is absolutely nuclear. Just a moment ago, my father publicly thanked me for graciously giving up my apartment, I stated, keeping my tone terrifyingly professional. The room was holding its collective breath. "I want to make something abundantly clear," I said, letting the silence stretch for maximum impact. "I didn't give it to them." I paused. "I didn't sell it to them. In fact, I had absolutely zero knowledge that my home was even on the market until they called me laughing about it 3 weeks ago." A collective, audible gasp ripped through the country club. Several older women at the church tables physically covered their open mouths. A few of Brandon's groomsmen aggressively leaned forward in their chairs. "My parents secretly listed my property behind my back," I announced, raising the manila folder high into the air. "They maliciously forged my legal signature on the closing documents." "April, what on earth are you?" my father barked, his voice laced with venomous panic. I explicitly said, "Do not interrupt me, Dad." My mother looked like she was about to vomit. Mr. Whitmore Sr. placed his hands flat on the table, his posture turning incredibly rigid. "I have the original, notarized property deed right here," I stated, pulling the heavy document out and displaying it. It clearly states my name, April Barrett, as the sole, independent owner. I bought that property with 8 years of my own blood and sweat. I never once authorized its sale. Frantic whispering began sweeping through the 200 guests like a wildfire. Brandon Whitmore was currently staring at his brand new in-laws with a look of absolute disgust. But here is the fantastic news for me, I continued, pulling the next piece of paper. A real estate transaction utilizing a forged signature is legally void. That is basic property law. I personally contacted the cash buyer, Mr. Peterson, last Thursday. Once I informed him of the massive felony taking place, he aggressively withdrew his offer. I held up the official termination letter. His massive escrow deposit has already been fully refunded. The sale is completely canceled. That is completely impossible, my mother shrieked, her voice cracking in half. The money. The $100,000 you were banking on to pay for this exact party? I stared dead into her terrified eyes. It is never arriving. Megan frantically clawed at Brandon's tuxedo sleeve. Wait, Brandon, what does she mean? What does this mean for the wedding bills? It means my home remains entirely mine, I projected, turning the microphone directly toward my hyperventilating sister. It was always mine, Megan. And you were fully aware of the heist. Brandon violently yanked his arm out of Megan's grasp. Mr. Whitmore Sr. slowly pushed his chair back and stood up. The entire room instantly deferred to his commanding presence. He marched directly toward me, holding out a massive, calloused hand. Young lady, may I please review those documents? He asked quietly. I handed him the explosive folder without a shred of hesitation. The massive ballroom watched in horrific silence as the legal titan flipped through the deed, the forgery evidence, and the cancellation notice. His stony expression never wavered, but the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. April, I am begging you, my mother whimpered, tears finally spilling over her mascara. Please, not in front of everyone. Not right now. Mom, this is the exact moment it needs to happen, I replied coldly. Because unfortunately for you, there is an even bigger lie to expose. I turned back to the horrified crowd. My father also just spent a solid 2 minutes praising Megan for her financial selflessness. He praised her for heroically paying their monthly mortgage to save them from ruin. I locked onto Megan. She looked like an animal trapped in a snare. Isn't that the narrative you've been pushing, Megan? April, please stop, Megan choked out, genuine terror radiating from her chest. Here is the absolute reality, I announced, reaching for the massive stack of bank papers Mr. Whitmore was holding. For the last 48 months, I am the one who has been secretly paying our parents' $2,100 mortgage. My dad physically stumbled backward, knocking over his chair. What? Every single cent. I hoisted the massive brick of bank statements high into the air. 48 consecutive payments, totaling over $100,000 of my personal income. I began passing the printed statements down the tables. Guests scrambled to look at them. April Barrett, printed undeniably at the top of every single transfer record. I turned the mic back to my sister. You snooped on my laptop years ago, Megan. You clearly saw my automated email receipts. You knew exactly who was saving this family, and you ran to Mom and Dad and claimed it was you. I can explain everything. Megan sobbed violently. You stole the credit for $100,000 of my grueling labor. My voice remained terrifyingly calm and final. Every single time Mom bragged about you at church, every single time Dad praised your maturity, you just smiled and soaked it in. You are a thief. Brandon Whitmore aggressively stood up. He looked down at his crying bride as if she were an alien species. Megan, his voice was dangerously quiet, but it sliced through the room. Are you telling me you lied about your finances to me? For 4 straight years. Brandon, baby, please, she reached out for his waist. He took 2 massive steps backward, physically repulsed. I lowered the microphone slightly. I originally kept my payments a secret because I loved my parents enough to spare them the public humiliation of bankruptcy, I told the crowd. But I will not sit here and watch my sister build her perfect life on top of my drained bank account. I took a deep, shuddering breath. The silence was deafening. Effective immediately, my auto draft is permanently canceled. My father's face completely collapsed. April, no. You can't do this to us. The bank will seize the estate. You literally tried to steal my only home. I fired back into the mic, and Megan gladly took the credit for saving yours. So, Megan, since the entire world already believes you've been footing the bill, you can officially take over the payments tomorrow. I turned to my completely broken parents. Strangely, the blinding rage had completely evaporated. I was just left with a hollow, crushing sadness. I loved you both enough to save your entire world in absolute secret, I whispered, my voice finally cracking. And neither of you loved me enough to even ask before you tried to destroy mine. I slammed the microphone down onto the table. The massive thud echoed violently through the sound system. I picked up my empty purse, turned my back on the head table, and began the long walk down the center aisle. From somewhere near the back exits, I heard Claire's voice ring out proudly. That is my best friend. A weaker person might have lingered to watch the absolute carnage unfold, to relish in the screaming matches and the frantic backpedaling. But my job was completely finished. The silence held for exactly 4 seconds after I dropped the mic. And then, the Ridgemont Country Club exploded. Total pandemonium. Hundreds of wealthy guests began aggressively whispering, pointing, and arguing. I saw a dozen cell phones whip out to record the chaos. The Whitmore family tables were in an absolute uproar. Is it true? I heard Brandon yelling over the noise as I neared the exit. Did you fabricate your entire life to me? I didn't. I was going to tell you the truth, I swear. Megan was screeching hysterically. For years. Brandon roared. You lied to your own parents for 4 years. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Whitmore Sr. corner my shrinking father. You swore to me that your family operated on absolute integrity, Richard, the billionaire growled. You swore this girl was trustworthy. It's a massive misunderstanding, sir, my dad pleaded desperately. She committed 4 years of financial fraud, Mrs. Whitmore shouted, getting in my dad's face. That is not a misunderstanding. That is a sociopathic pattern. Suddenly, Megan shoved violently through her bridesmaids and sprinted after me, her heavy silk gown dragging wildly across the marble. She grabbed my elbow just as I reached the lobby. April, you psychotic bitch. You ruined my perfect day. I calmly peeled her manicured fingers off my arm. No, Megan. You ruined your own life the exact second you decided to start lying. Her face contorted in horrific disbelief. She was genuinely short-circuiting. She had never, ever been told no in her entire sheltered existence. Behind her, I saw Brandon storming out a side exit, completely abandoning his bride at the altar. My mother came sprinting up behind Megan, completely out of breath. April, honey, please. Don't leave. We can sit down and negotiate this. We should have negotiated 4 years ago, Mom, I said, locking eyes with her. Or perhaps 3 weeks ago, before you decided to forge my signature and steal my sanctuary. You are totally out of time. I pushed through the heavy glass doors of the country club and stepped out into the crisp autumn evening. The valet stand was already swarming with confused guests demanding their cars. Claire was leaning against her sedan, twirling her keys. So, she smirked. How does the freedom feel? I took a massive gulp of the cool night air. It feels like I finally woke up. We drove 3 miles down the road to a quiet, dimly lit diner, far away from the smoking crater of the Barrett family reception. Claire ordered us 2 black coffees. We needed the caffeine to process the adrenaline. You know, you still hold the nuclear launch codes, Claire reminded me, stirring her mug. Forgery is still a massive felony. If you want, I can have warrants issued by Tuesday. I wrapped my freezing hands around the warm ceramic mug. I thought about the ironclad evidence sitting in my purse. No, I said, surprising myself with my own certainty. I don't need them rotting in a jail cell. The public humiliation was the exact punishment they deserved. And as for the golden child? Claire asked, raising an eyebrow. Megan's fate rests entirely in the hands of the Whitmore family lawyers now, I replied, taking a sip of the bitter coffee. My cell phone violently vibrated on the diner table. 23 missed calls from my mom. 15 from my dad. 8 from a frantic Megan. A terrifying wall of desperate text messages. I calmly navigated to the settings, switched the phone to Do Not Disturb, and flipped it face down on the table. I am officially retiring from my role as the family fixer, I announced. Claire raised her coffee mug in the air. To brand new beginnings. I clinked my mug against hers. To brand new beginnings. The shockwaves from the wedding speech decimated the family over the next 72 hours. I didn't have to lift a finger to hear the gossip. It flowed freely through Claire, my college alumni network, and the one cool cousin who had always secretly hated Megan. Brandon Whitmore never spent a single night with his new wife. He drove straight from the country club to his parents' gated estate and completely iced her out. By Tuesday morning, the ruthless Whitmore legal team had officially filed for a rapid annulment, citing marriage executed under fraudulent misrepresentation. Megan's prestigious PR firm caught wind of the scandal. Unsurprisingly, a company built entirely on maintaining honest public images didn't want a viral fraudster on their payroll. She was immediately placed on an indefinite, unpaid leave of absence. The church fallout was absolutely spectacular. Mrs. Smith, the nosy elder who had witnessed my mic drop, successfully spread the entire story to the entire congregation before Sunday morning service. My parents were far too humiliated to even show their faces in the pews. My phone was flooded with messages from distant relatives. I knew something was wrong with Megan, one aunt texted. "Your parents always treated you so unfairly," wrote another. I just sat in my living room, inside my legally secured apartment, and watched the city traffic below. I didn't feel a wicked sense of victory. I just felt a massive, sprawling peace. The constant anxiety I had carried in my chest for 32 years had completely evaporated. Exactly 2 weeks later, an unknown number slipped past my blocked list. It was my father. Against my better judgment, I tapped the green button. April? His voice was completely hollowed out. He sounded 10 years older. We just received a certified letter from the mortgage lender. I didn't offer a single word of comfort. "They are giving us exactly 90 days to vacate," he whispered, his voice trembling. "After that, they are seizing the property. Have you tried asking your favorite daughter for a loan?" I asked, my voice completely devoid of emotion. "She claims she's been paying it for years. I'm sure she has the funds." A massive, suffocating silence filled the line. She is absolutely nothing, April. She never did. We realize that now." "I know, Dad. I've known since the beginning." "Why didn't you just tell us it was you?" he suddenly cried out, a pathetic attempt to shift the blame. "Would it have honestly changed a single thing?" I fired back. "Or would you have just found a new way to excuse her behavior and demand more from me?" He didn't have an answer. "I am officially done saving you, Dad. You three need to figure out how to survive as a family." "But April, your family." "Not anymore," I interrupted. "Not the way I used to be." I hung up the phone and permanently blocked his new number. 2 months later, my childhood home hit the market as a desperate short sale. It was listed for a pathetic $285,000, practically begging for a buyer. It was scooped up in 11 days. Once the bank took their massive cut and the late fees were applied, my parents walked away with essentially zero profit. They were forced to rent a cramped, 2-bedroom unit in a cheap apartment complex across town. Ironically, it was the exact same cheap complex Megan had been forced to move into. The annulment was finalized with brutal efficiency. Brandon was reportedly already dating a brilliant junior partner at his father's law firm. And for the very first time in her pampered, cushioned existence, Megan was actually forced to clock into a grueling job and pay her own massive stack of bills without a single person to bail her out. I didn't gloat. I didn't text them, "I told you so." I just moved forward. Then, roughly 6 months after the catastrophic wedding, a plain white envelope arrived in my mailbox. There was no return address, but I instantly recognized my mother's looping cursive. I considered shredding it, but my curiosity won out. "Dear April," the letter began. "I am so profoundly sorry. I am sorry for taking you for granted. I am sorry for blinding myself to Megan's flaws and making you carry the weight of our failures. You deserved parents who fiercely protected you. We completely failed you. I do not expect your forgiveness, but I need you to know that the blinders are finally off. I see exactly what we stole from you. Your father's pride won't allow him to apologize, but mine is completely gone. You deserved so much better. Mom." I read the ink twice. I slowly folded the paper and placed it in a kitchen drawer. "It's a decent start," I whispered to the empty room. But apologies written in pen are incredibly cheap. True change requires action. Later that evening, I sat on my brand new living room sofa, a gorgeous, expensive piece I bought without an ounce of guilt, and watched the sunset through my bay window. My freshly painted sage green walls seemed to glow in the fading light. My apartment finally felt like a home, completely cleansed of the toxic energy that used to haunt me. Life was genuinely thriving. I had finally secured that massive corporate promotion I had been grinding toward. That extra $800 a month, the money that used to vanish into my parents' black hole of a mortgage, was currently sitting safely in my high-yield travel fund. I had just booked a luxurious 2-week solo vacation to Portugal for the spring. For 32 years, I had been the family safety net. Now, I was finally spending my energy entirely on myself. My cell phone buzzed on the coffee table. A text popped up from an unblocked number. It was Megan. "April, I am so incredibly sorry for everything I did to you. Can we please sit down and talk?" I stared at the glowing pixels for a very long time. A year ago, I would have frantically typed back a massive paragraph, desperately trying to smooth over the conflict and restore the peace. But the girl who used to write those texts no longer existed. I picked up the phone, took a deep breath, and typed a single, final response. Actions speak louder than words. Show me a changed person, and maybe we will talk. I hit send and tossed the phone away. Maybe she would undergo a massive personal transformation. Maybe she wouldn't. Maybe my parents would eventually prove they were capable of actual, unconditional love. Maybe they were totally incapable. But the beautiful part was, it no longer dictated my happiness. I had completely stopped waiting for their validation to determine my self-worth. Family is not automatically guaranteed by blood. Family is built on a foundation of mutual respect. And if that respect isn't a two-way street, then the street needs to be permanently closed. I looked around my quiet, peaceful, beautiful apartment. It was mine. It would always be mine. And for the very first time in my entire life, I didn't need a single person's permission to feel like I was enough. And that is exactly how I escaped the Barrett family circus. If you have ever been the quiet, dependable sibling who constantly gave everything while someone else happily stole the spotlight, I see you, and I stand with you. Drop a comment below and tell me, what is the ultimate boundary you finally set? What is the one line you will never allow another human being to cross again? If my story resonated with your soul, make sure to hit that subscribe button, give this video a massive thumbs up, and check out the next incredible story linked right down in the description. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today, and I will see you in the next one.